Well, good morning and welcome once again to Elevenses. I'm Kevin Williams of Survival Skills Rider Training. It's show number 226, I think. Clocks went forward last night. It's a bit of a gloomy morning in London here today. Not quite as warm as it has been over the last few days. It looks like our false spring is coming to an end with some fairly chilly weather actually forecast for the next few days, which is a bit of a shame, but hey ho, it is still only March. So we still have the spring really to look forward to. So what have I got for you today? Well, we'll be looking at a Train for Ukraine event in the US. A bike fest in Devon has been cancelled on public safety grounds. I'll be wondering why that is. The budget takes 5p off petrol bills, but there is a warning that the Morrisons takeover could actually raise fuel prices in some parts of the UK. And of course, road tax has also gone up on bikes. A quick reminder, the rules have just changed on phone use when driving, and it does include bikes. Can-Am, the Canadian company, are back with 3 electric bikes. Ola, the electric bike manufacturer, and an Israeli startup called StoreDot are teaming up to bring 5-minute charging to e-bikes. Benelli has pitched their Tnt125 as an affordable monkey bike, but I do ask why on earth anybody would put a radial 3-cylinder motor in a 2-wheeler. And then finally, today's talking point, why I'm not absolutely convinced by an exhaust manufacturer's power claims for a specific exhaust system. So lots to talk about today. Stay with us for the next 35-40 minutes or so. And don't forget, you can join me here today. And if you've got any questions, I've just pressed the wrong button. Here we go. Any comments, any questions, don't forget you can add yours to the comment stream. I will try and get back to you during the session if I possibly can, and I'll certainly answer it at the end if I don't manage to get to you online. Anything you want to ask, fire away, and I'll try to answer it for you. Meanwhile, who have we got in this morning? Adrian has looked in, and Nigel is here saying it's a crap morning out there. That's down in Kent. So yes, you probably got it a bit worse than we have here in northwest London, as the weather is coming from the east today. Right, so just a quick reminder, there is oh, I've got the wrong bit of reminder up there. Why have I got that wrong? Oh, well, never mind. There is a ride out which I'm organising towards the end of next month. These mini ride outs, I was going to have a little poster there for you, but I seem to have forgotten to put that in. The idea of these is relatively short, modestly paced, not too many bikes, just 5 bikes along with me over some nice interesting roads. We won't be taking a black down the fast A road, so if you want to join me for the first one, we'll be starting from just outside St Albans and going off into the over the Chilterns on some lovely roads. Do join me. If hopefully the weather will be nice and fine. One thing to say about these, they will be weather dependent, so if the weather looks like rubbish, I will cancel them. There's no point going for a ride in bad weather. And the other thing is, don't turn up on the day, please. Don't bring along a bunch of buddies who haven't pre-booked, because I will not let you come on the ride. The ride is specifically pre-booked, so I know exactly how many I'm going to be dealing with. All right, okay, so do come along for those if you want to. As I say, there'll be relatively low paced, nice easy ride outs. That's the plan. Now, the first piece of news I've got for you concerns the Ukraine once again. Oh God, my pictures have all gone pear-shaped again. Let me just try and reset that. I had this all set up again, and it's just conked out again, which is really, really irritating. Right, try and get the browser to do the thing it's supposed to do. Right, let's see if we can get that up. That looks good. Let's see if I can share that screen again. Just bear with me for a moment while I just fix this. Right, okay. I checked that minutes before I went on. There we go. We finally got the right photo up. I don't know why that wasn't displaying. So that is the Train for Ukraine scheme. Now, this is over in the USA, and the Women's Moto Project TWMP and the Mini Bike Race Series M1 GP. They're partnering on this Train for Ukraine event, where everyday motorcycle riders and advocates, they say, can make a difference by supporting the Ukraine and gaining motorcycle riding skills at the same time. And basically, what they're doing is they're setting up a special training session, which will take place at the no less than the Scottish Rite Cultural Centre, yes, in Long Beach, California. That's the obvious place to put a Scottish Cultural Centre, but hey ho. May 28th, 2022 is the date, so if you happen to be out there, why not pop along? There's a GoFundMe page where 100% of the proceeds are going to the humanitarian non-profit organization called America Cares. And those who donate $300 or more to the campaign will get a free training session at the Train for Ukraine event. And the organizers say that TWMP is a proud sponsor of the event, and they're looking forward to volunteering at the Train for Ukraine event, and they hope to inspire new riders with the freedom that comes with it. That's Amanda Hazar. She's the co-founder of TWMP speaking. As of this very moment, the organisers haven't announced a particular schedule for the event there, but information will appear on the GoFundMe page as the event approaches. So yes, that's something that the Americans at least can do, but I suppose there's nothing to stop people donating from the UK. Meanwhile, down in the southwest of the UK, Paignton's English Riviera Bike Festival, which is a 2-day event said to be the curtain raiser for the summer season at the Devon resort, has been cancelled due to public safety fears. Now, I'm rather intrigued by this. The event, which is still listed on a number of websites, or as on one I found, the cancellation is kind of not particularly clear because it's still got all the details about what was promised for the event. For example, thousands of bikes parked up on the promenade, a huge retail area packed with stalls selling merchandise, and local bars and pubs hosting events including live music, with plenty of beer, cider, and liquor on offer. And this had all been due to take place between April 29th and May the 1st, so just over a month's time. And it was expected to bring in hundreds of motorcycle enthusiasts and other people. It was planned to replace a similar event which had been organised previously by the Bikers Make a Difference charity, and that had supposedly become a fixture on the resort's early season calendar. And they do go on to say that the regular Wednesday English Riviera bike nights, which take place down there, will not be affected. Now, the new organisers announced this on social media, and it was said to have been in consultation with Torbay's Public Safety Advisory Group, which includes Devon and Cornwall Police. And a statement said the event cancellation is due to the overall public safety concerns that our current event plan posed. No biker-themed events will be taking place on public open spaces in Paignton or Torquay, organised by English Riviera Bike Festival, and the Bike Festival in Paignton is cancelled. This is not the outcome we were hoping for, and we apologise to all affected by the decision. Now, it's also being stated quite clearly that the cancellation has nothing to do with COVID pandemic or social distancing, which leaves me wondering exactly what the public safety fears were. The statement from the council only says that they were unable to grant the necessary permissions due to operational difficulties surrounding public safety. So was it policing? Were the police not able to devote resources to the event? Was it due to the fears that too many riders would be flooding into town, parking in places where they weren't supposed to be parking, and causing traffic issues? I mean, that's certainly one thing that I know has worried organisers in the past. Was it the inevitable crashes that would attend a big gathering like this? If you attracted a lot of motorcycles to one place in the country, you can guarantee there will be accidents out on the road. Is it the fairly volatile mix of bikes and booze. I mean, I'd be really interested to know actually what caused the council to make that decision. If anybody has any ideas, do drop me a line. Right, a couple of other people are looking in. Martin Foster has said good morning, or he's, as he says, it's more correctly, it's evening where he is. Good to see you, Martin. And Terry Leach has also looked in from New Zealand. Hi, Terry, good to see you. Don't forget, Elevenses goes out Wednesdays and Sundays at 11 a.m. BST. We are in BST now, of course. I keep putting BST up, and it was GMT until this morning, but we are BST now, so back to the summertime. Don't forget, if you can't catch it here, YouTube is your friend. The Survival Skills UK channel has all these shows. Don't forget that all-important UK on the end, though, or you will end up with a site telling you how to buy sharp knives or something similar to that. All right, okay, so you've probably noticed that petrol prices have been soaring due to the continuing conflict in Ukraine. I actually saw the local unleaded had gone up to nearly 180 at one petrol station. It's a bit cheaper elsewhere, but that was a bit of an outlier. But yeah, it's a bit scary, the price. And diesel, it was approaching £1.90 a gallon. So I'm very glad I don't have a diesel van. But hey ho, Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor, threw us all a scrap by cutting 5p a litre off fuel duty. And the reduction was announced during the Wednesday spring statement. And although that went live at 6 p.m. and Sunak actually said he wanted to see retailers passing on the reduction right away, the retailers themselves promptly warned consumers not to expect to see immediate cuts. I know one supermarket at least did knock the 5p off. And that is because, unlike VAT, which is a sales tax and therefore charged the moment you actually buy the product, fuel duty is sold on wholesale prices, not on the pump price. And that basically means it takes time for the cut to filter through to the pumps. And that's why actually many people had been calling for a reduction in the rate of VAT, because that would have had an immediate impact on the fuel price. The Petrol Retailers Association said retailers are holding duty paid stock, which will have to be sold before the fuel duty cuts come in. To give the motorist an immediate discount at the pumps, the Chancellor would have to backdate the fuel duty cut to the 1st of March. So basically there are 3 to 4 weeks stocks already in the system on which duty has been paid. Industry leaders, of course, said the government could have done more. Howard Cox of the Fair Fuel campaign said it will give some respite to millions of motorists, but it will only benefit drivers and the economy if the new fuel taxation level becomes permanent and is accompanied by the introduction of an independent pump pricing watchdog. Yes, wishful thinking there, I think, Howard. If that's not bad enough, though, the UK competition regulator has warned that the takeover of Morrisons by the US-based private equity firm Clayton, Dubilier and Rice could lead to higher fuel prices. Why is this? Well, it's because CD&R actually also own the petrol station giant Motor Fuel Group, MFG. And they operate no less than 921 petrol stations across England, Scotland and Wales, and they operate them under a number of different brands too. Now, there are 339 petrol stations at Morrisons supermarket, so you see that actually makes a significant group of fuel retailers. And the regulators actually said that there are 101 local areas where MFG and Morrisons both have forecourts, and they are concerned that with them all falling under one umbrella, the retailers will actually have limited competition, and the merger, it won't necessarily be in the public interest, and I would say. Something else the Chancellor could have done to help promote motorcycling as an affordable means of transport, as well as ease the burden on riders, was to have frozen or even reduced vehicle excise duty for powered two-wheelers. And instead, that annual bill goes up 2. For bikes of up to 150cc, the annual road tax has gone up £1, fairly modest, £22. For 151 to 400ccs, it's gone up £2 to £47. For some reason, the biggest increase, the price hike, is for 401 to 600cc bikes, which of course just happens to be the bracket my bikes fall into, which is up £4 to £73 a year. And the biggest bikes have gone up £5 and now top the 100. They are now £101 a year to tax. I always look at the tax rates for modern low emissions cars, and I look at the emission regulations for modern motorcycles, and I wonder how it is that you can have a car on the road and pay less road tax for a low emission car than you can for a low emission modern motorcycle. It's a very, very skewed system. And you remember we have a National Motorcyclist Council. I would love to see them tackling the government on this. It was something that was announced, the tax rises on bikes a couple of weeks ago. It was something that the National Motorcycle Council could have made a big thing about, to publicise the rises for motorcyclists, which are out of kilter with what car drivers are paying. But of course, we haven't had anything, so that's our representative group for you. Right, and one other reminder: as of Friday, the 25th, in other words, this week just gone, the rules on mobile phone use in the UK have also been tightened up. Now, it's been illegal to use a handheld phone to text, call, or use the internet while driving for many years. The penalties for that went up fairly significantly a couple of years ago. But it turned out that people were escaping the rules by claiming that they weren't actually using their phone for interactive communication. And unbelievably, it was actually legal to take pictures and videos, or even play video games or scroll through music lists. And of course, you could also unlock your phone because it wasn't being used for communication. And people did get off prosecutions by saying that that's what they were doing. And of course, nobody got any way of proving what they were or weren't doing, so they escaped. So the loophole has been closed. The ban now extends to making it illegal to do those photo and video opportunities, or play games, or scroll through music lists, and you can't unlock your phone, check notifications, or access apps whilst driving with a handheld phone. It's worth pointing out that the definition of driving includes being stationary in traffic, for example, at lights or in a standstill traffic on motorway. The engine has to be switched off and the vehicle parked to be counted as not driving. And don't forget too that the ban actually covers the use of mobile phones on motorcycles too. And it also extends, of course, to sat navs. Now, what can you do? Well, this is where it gets slightly tricky, because the explanation isn't entirely clear. It says you can use a device hands-free while driving if it's secured in a cradle. So you can effectively use the phone to take a call, or you can use it as a sat nav. But it says you must be responsible for your driving, and you can be charged with an offence if the police find you not to be in proper control of the vehicle. Now, I'm reading this, I've read it 3 or 4 times, I've read various interpretations. I'm still not entirely clear whether this leaves you free to actually tap the screen at some point, for example, to pick up or decline a call on your hands-free phone, whether you can do that to acknowledge an alert, for example, on the sat nav, or whether you can do something, in fact, like even zoom in on the screen, something you probably want to do if you're using it as a navigation aid from time to time. And this leads me indirectly into another question: what do you do with a touch screen on your car or bike? Now, many recent cars have touch screens with navigation and other functions. A lot of the controls for things like the heaters are now actually sometimes on touch screen. Can you use those? Motorcycles too are being increasingly equipped with screens which are touch adapted. So I would like to know exactly what the rules is, but it seems to me that even if the law manages to clarify some of the escape routes that people used to get out of it in the past, it's actually brought in a few more questions that still need answers. So get it wrong basically, and you could be hit with a fine of up to £1,000 and 6 points on the license. So it's fairly important to know exactly what the rules are. Right, okay, so don't forget, if you do enjoy this show, you can head over to my coffee page and you can buy me a coffee over there, which is much so gratefully accepted, particularly as it's going to get particularly cold next week again. I shall definitely be in the market for a coffee, so drop me a line. Terry in New Zealand says that the government over there has slashed 25 cents off a litre. I'm just trying to do the calculation there. So roughly New Zealand dollars to the pound, isn't it? So that's about 12.5p. So that's a fairly significant reduction compared with what we've got here in the UK. So Rishi, go and look to see what they're doing in New Zealand. Thanks, Terry. Useful to know that. Right, okay, so moving on with some motorcycles now. What was that all about? Brand owner BRB Incorporated, which stands for Bombardier Recreational Products, yesterday announced that they are relaunching the Can-Am range of motorcycles with a product lineup that will actually be completely electric. Now, Can-Am may not be entirely a name that you're familiar with, but it's actually 50 years since the first Can-Ams appeared. Go back to 1971, a team of Canadian and Californian development technicians under the direction of an American called Gary Robison. He began the development of a range of motocross and enduro bikes. And what they did was they picked up the rotary valve two-stroke motor from Rotax, an Austrian company at the time, which happened to be a Bombardier subsidiary, and they built these off-road competition bikes. Now, Jeff Smith, who I remember actually from watching sort of trials on the TV when I was a kid, he was a former motocross world champion. Or it might have been motocross actually, of course, then. He tested the bikes. Production began in 1973 and a race program was established, and it almost immediately was successful, and they actually gained multiple world championships on Can-Ams. But Bombardier actually shifted their focus. They actually moved towards heavy transit. For example, they build trains, including some of the recent London Underground stock. That's their product. And they also moved into aircraft production. And by 1983, Bombardier really lost interest in motorcycles, so they outsourced the development and production of Can-Am motorcycles to Armstrong CCM motorcycles here in the UK. And they only lasted as far as 1987 before they disappeared completely. So if you do know the name Can-Am, you're probably most likely to know it because they also make snowmobiles and watercraft. And they also put the Rotax engines into marine propulsion systems. They're in carts and also light recreational aircraft. We do have a picture of if I can get the picture up, everything's not going. Right, here we go. It's all going a bit weird this morning. Every time I set things up weeks in advance, it all seems to go horribly wrong. Anyway, here we go. Somewhere we have a photo, and it's disappeared again. Ah, for heaven's sake. I need a producer. Who wants to produce the show for me? Right, there we go. That is the teaser from the video. If you want to watch the video, the link is just going up in the chat stream. So basically the explanation is, with the motorcycle industry switching to electric, we saw an opportunity to reclaim our motorcycle heritage and to re-enter the market. This new product category is extremely important to us, and we're thrilled that Can-Am motorcycles are the first EV models in BRP's electric lineup to be confirmed to consumers. Many of us have very fond memories of riding the early dirt bike models. Now we look forward to building on the rich history of the Can-Am brand to inspire and impress a new generation of motorcyclists and electric vehicle enthusiasts. So that is Jose Boyce Jolly. He's the president and CEO of BRP. And they're basically saying that the new bikes will be designed to satisfy those who, quote, crave adventure, seek the thrill of the open road, long for a quiet ride in the country, or want to liven up the city streets. So it does sound like they're aiming their bikes at pretty much anybody who rides a two-wheeler. So the first models are expected to appear on showroom floors by about 2024. Now, okay. As a certain online newspaper puts it, would you buy an electric motorcycle if it fully charged in 5 minutes? Well, if the tie-up between Indian electric scooter maker Ola Electric and an Israeli startup, StoreDot, goes as planned, electric charging in pretty much the same time as it currently takes to fill your tank with unleaded is the future. Now, StoreDot was founded in 2012, and what they've been working on is developing lithium-ion battery-based compounds, but mixed with what they call nanomaterials and inorganic and organic compounds that enable ultra-fast charging for the mobile and industrial markets. The company says that the process redefines the chemistry of conventional lithium-ion batteries, taking electric vehicle charging times from hours to minutes. So basically what they're saying is that the breakthrough is achieved by replacing graphite in the cell's anode with metalloid nanoparticles. And this overcomes issues including safety, cell life, and cell swelling during the charging process. Their tech has been in development for 3 years. They've got patents on it. And interestingly, they say that the system is also self-repairing, so it actually allows the batteries to regenerate while they're in use. So if that's correct, and it deals with the loss of efficiency of a battery, that could be quite interesting. So Ola have invested up to $80 million in the company, and the money will go towards improved research and development and to push these batteries towards mass production. And they basically say that they look to have a 100-mile battery that can be recharged in 5 minutes by 2024. Now, you probably know that Ola are a ride-hailing service, and they actually dominate the shared mobility market in India, but they also produce a range of small electric scooters. So you can see why the match is important to them. StoreDot doesn't just work with Ola. They have a number of other investors, including BP Ventures, which is the sort of venture arm of the multinational oil and gas company, Daimler, who own the Mercedes-Benz brand, a Japanese electronic companies, TDK and Samsung, and they're all working to move this technology ahead. They've demonstrated it with a full charge of a two-wheel vehicle in 5 minutes back in 2019, and they've also used it to commercial drone. I'll start getting my tongue tied now. Commercial drone charging, and of course they've also used it for mobile phones. They're working on, they say, an even faster 2-minute charging time, and quite frankly, that would render range anxiety ancient history. But until we get there, we still have petrol engines to look forward to for some time to come. So here's one that I liked the look of personally. So let's get that one up on screen. There it is. Small and inexpensive internal combustion engine bikes aren't going to fade away immediately. And this one here is the Benelli Tnt125. As you can see, it's a fairly compact machine. So it's another one based on monkey bike theme. At what they call an accessible seat height, 30.7 inches or 780 millimeters, which should cope with most riders. Wheelbase is 110 1215 millimeters, or just under 48 inches, and it's a relatively light 124 kilograms, or 273 pounds. Now, TNT actually stands for Tornado Naked Tray, which is a slight misnomer, as the bike is quite clearly not a triple but a single cylinder. It's a relatively low tech single overhead cam, 125cc. It's got fairly straightforward air and oil cooling, but it makes a decent enough 11.1 horsepower, 9,500 RPM, so it's not revving its nuts off. 10 Newton meters, just under 7.4 pounds-feet of torque at 7,000 RPM, so it should be good enough to push the bike to around 55, maybe 60 miles an hour on a good day. It's Euro 5 compliant, and I'd hope to get around 120 mpg from a bike like that. The styling is actually pretty sharp, I have to say. As you can see, the engine sort of hangs upside down from that steel trellis. You got inverted forks at the front, monoshock at the rear, and I do like that twin exhaust system. I know it's only a single, so it's a bit of a conceit, but I do rather like it. I just think the splash guard on the rear there is fairly ghastly. But keeping the bike shiny side up, you get 12-inch wheels, and stopping's taken care of with a pair of discs, one at each end. But here's the cost-cutting bit: no ABS. It's not necessary on a bike of less than 125 cc's, so you only get Benelli's combined braking system. Now, frankly, given that the market for a bike like this is undoubtedly going to be learners, with a side order of returning riders who are looking to cut costs on the daily commute, I think that's a bit of a disappointment. I'd like to see ABS on bikes like that, but it does mean that the bike can come in at a very, very affordable price point, just under €2,500, which I think is fairly remarkable, actually. Combine that with the fuel savings, and it will be surprising if a few of these don't appear on the London streets. But if you want a impractical motorcycle, take a look at this beast. What on earth were the manufacturers of this thinking? It's a 3-cylinder radial engine, as you can see. It's relieved from an aircraft, I'm told. It's 2,100 cc's, and it's a pump out 240 horsepower. Even for a land racer, where a long wheelbase is an advantage, and obviously an inline configuration is a benefit because it keeps the engine sort of compact from the frontal area point of view, I'm not entirely convinced that this is actually going to be a particularly effective engine, because those cylinders are hanging quite low there. Anyway, so that's all going into a land speed record attempt, and I'll be interested to see how that goes. But frankly, I think there would be more sensible ways of putting an engine in the bike. But anyway, there we go. Right, just before we move on to the final part of the show, I just want to remind you that I am offering online coaching. I do talk about it occasionally, but I had a session yesterday, very interesting one actually, chap with IAM and a ROSPA background, who just wants to look outside a little bit, the regular sort of stuff that he coaches. He's actually a tutor as well, and he was interested in my thinkings. He's read my books, Survival Skills and Tarmac Tactics, and The Science of Being Seen as well. So we had an hour-long online schedule booked, and in fact we actually ran over to nearly an hour and a half because he had lots of interesting questions to talk about. And this is the advantage of doing something online. We can actually converse, we can talk, we can make a discussion. I can pull up whiteboards, but questions can be asked, answers can be offered, discussion can take place. So, I charge £40 for these sessions, which yesterday the you got a bargain. But yeah, if there's anything you do want to talk about motorcycling, it doesn't have to be a hardcore course, as it were, to get some benefit out of it. You know, the idea is you can chat to me, and hopefully I can get you to think about what you're doing on two wheels. So yeah, do drop me a line if you're interested. Now, final bit of the show today. Don't want to run on too much longer. We looked at through Paul Varnsbury's, we've looked at CE clothing, and we've seen that many manufacturers are either flouting the rules for the CE regulations, or they are misrepresenting what you're actually getting. And I just really wanted to extend this to asking how much we can trust ads for other bike parts. Now, personally, I've always treated any ad for any motorcycle part with a pinch of salt, particularly when it says something like universal fitment. What that basically means is almost inevitably universally doesn't fit anything properly, or only minor modifications needed. Almost inevitably ends up with a trip to the tool shop to go and buy something that I don't own. And the moment you've got a fitting kit as well, the I can remember fitting a rack to a bike, which came with a fitting kit for the indicators, and the indicators simply didn't fit the bracket, and the bracket didn't fit the bike. I ended up having to make my own, and the wires that it came with were too short. Hopeless. And then there are more products which promise power enhancement. Now, again, I'm always a bit dubious about these. High performance filters, those are a favorite, guaranteed to increase your fuel, or decrease rather, your fuel consumption, improve your throttle response. Now, well, yeah, okay, if the last filter was in there 50,000 miles and hasn't been changed since the bike rolled off the production line, and it's got dirt encrusted in it on inch deep, like one bike I'd changed the filter on after I bought it secondhand, I can see that there will be a benefit from putting a new filter. But the last time I changed the original filter, that was something close to the service interval, I couldn't detect any difference. The only thing was the high performance filter was actually a bit cheaper than the OE one. And there were other products floating around, high performance coils, plug leads. The only thing I did find made a big difference were high performance platinum plugs. And they did make a big difference to my Honda singles. The bike didn't go any faster, of course, but it did stop the bike's stalling at awkward intervals. So one thing I've had to replace, of course, over the years are exhaust systems, because they tended to rot away. It's not so much of a problem at the moment, but back when I had sort of 1970s and 80s Hondas, they generally rotted out from the inside. I've just actually finally got the downpipes to match the silencers for my little 250, actually, which I need to put on at some point. But I do remember buying a pair of these. Now let me get the photo up again. If you've got a long memory, you may recall these beauties. They were known as Dunstall Decibel silencers, and I fitted a pair of those to my 250 Honda, mostly because they were about the cheapest thing I could find at the time, and I was a cash-strapped student. If essentially they were a chromed steel tube with nothing in the middle. The sort of little outlets that you could see at the end are entirely cosmetic. They absolutely did nothing. Excuse me. There was nothing behind them at all. So it was interesting. I guess I could have borrowed a decibel meter. From the physics department at college, but quite frankly, it sounded like Concorde on takeoff, that 250. And I was actually amazed to discover that Dunstall Decibel silencers, excuse me, are actually still on sale. 80 quid each, if you fancy the classic sound. At the time, the motorcycle manufacturers weren't making big efforts to get lots of power out of a bike. The silencers really were designed for looks rather than efficiency. But as things have moved along, there's been a big change. Manufacturers these days make huge efforts to get maximum power out of their motorcycles. And if you think about it, it's not surprising because they've been fighting against increasingly tight noise regulations and also the emissions regulations. So getting the pipe right soaks up a lot of R&D resources, second only to building the motor in the first place. Now, it just happens an ad for a brand of exhaust dropped through the virtual letterbox, promising me performance gains on modern bikes. So I kind of went and had a bit of a look to see what was on offer for my XJ6. It may not be the very latest bike, but it's reasonably modern. And in fact, they do have a silencer for the bike, which I seem to have lost the photo for. Oh, there it is again. Right, I jumped two at once. There it is. So there's an XJ6, and there's the silencer hanging on the side of the machine. Basically, it's an end can which slips onto the existing exhaust outlet. And it comes with a dyno chart which shows a small but consistent power increase right through the rev range. I'll come back to that. But here's where it gets interesting, because the can doesn't actually replace an existing silencing element. That is the output from the Yamaha XJ6, and that is the end of the silencer. The silencer's the sort of big steel box that you can just see behind the stand there under the foot peg. All the silencing happens in that underslung exhaust out of sight under the sump, and that is the standard exit from the silencer. So what does this exhaust can do? Well, it actually just take off that little chromed exit, the trim over the exhaust system, and then you slide on and bolt in place this exhaust unit. So think about what it's actually doing. The standard silencer is left in place. You're not taking anything off the bike other than a tiny bit of trim. But the weird thing is that they have a dyno chart, which allows or implies that you get more power. There it is. And as you can see, the increase in power there is around about 3 horsepower, and that's the very top end. You get an increase of about 5 horsepower. The peak is about 3 horsepower higher, and minimal gains, but they are consistent right through the rev range. Only really right at the bottom end does the pipe allegedly produce slightly less power than standard. But the question that you really have to ask yourself is, if you're not taking anything away from the standard exhaust, how is it that you're getting this added power? I have absolutely no idea. Now, as we probably know, you can tune an exhaust to the right length and get more power, but here the exhaust is in place. It's left completely alone, and we're basically just adding a heavy lump of metal to the end of the existing system, so making the exhaust gases flow another sort of half meter or so to get to the open air. It doesn't seem to me to be likely to produce any performance benefit, just a weight penalty. The fact is, on the XJ6 and all the other, a lot of the modern Yamahas, everything is done under that big box slung under the sump. Okay. Now, if you were looking at a race system where the entire system from header pipes all the way down to the silencers themselves were removed, including the catalytic converter, of course, then maybe you would get a power gain. But of course, it wouldn't satisfy those pesky emission regulations, and it wouldn't produce the noise limits either. So there we go. The dyno chart actually is attributed to Dynojet Research, who are said to be a world leader in performance enhancement products for cars and motorcycles. And that gave me a clue perhaps as to how Dynojet had managed to get their higher figures. Now, they are manufacturers of the Power Commander, but the thing about the Power Commander is that it actually richens the mix at lower revs where the noise limits kick in. So if there was going to be a benefit from power command, I would have expected it to see it at the lower end of the spectrum, not the top. So I doubt that they fitted a power commander and then tested it. But my guess is that possibly what they did was they tested an older machine and then got a baseline of power, and then they serviced it, checked the valves perhaps, replace the air filter, change the plugs, all the little things that you can do that just perk up a slightly non-optimal motor to almost brand new again. So my guess is if they did that, then they got their figures on a freshly serviced motor with clean oil and all the other bits and pieces, that maybe that's how they got the slightly higher figures. I'm not saying that's what happened, but I can't see any other way that that's replacement exhaust could have gained anything over the stock exhaust. And I'd finish off by saying that, frankly, how are you going to feel 3 or 5 horsepower? I don't think you are. Personally, I'd feel that you're more likely to get a benefit from a fresh chain. Right, okay, so that's it for today. A couple of comments here. Terry says he associates the Bombardier name with the 3-wheeled Spider. Yeah, okay. That's yes, that's well known. And Martin says that he's fine with a 3-hour recharge time on his e-bikes, but he would like more range. Yeah, I mean, I think it depends where you ride, doesn't it? You're in a slightly unique situation out in where you are, Mongolia, if I remember correctly. But obviously, for what I'm doing around London and doing my bike training courses, it would be ideal if I could pop into a top-up station after I've done my training just before I head home. But at the moment, I could just about run some of the courses with a 0 with the range extender, but I would be on the petrol or the electric equivalent of fumes by the time I got home. Right, so that is it for today. I've mentioned the mini ride out. If you want to go and book, have a look at the link here. It will take you to all my events, including the upcoming April live Science of Being Seen. This is the full presentation, which covers everything from human visual perception through the motorcycle conspicuity issues, and I also give you some proactive techniques to help avoid junction collisions. That's Wednesday, 6th of April at 8 p.m. Tickets are £8, and do look at the link there and you'll get an update on all those. So 2 years after COVID kicked in, this was the sort of 2 years plus 1 show. So thank you for joining me today. We've run on again a little bit longer than I had intended, but I hope the content has kept you interested. Don't forget, anything you want to say, I will get back to you after the show too. So if you are out there riding today, it's slightly chillier than it has been. I dare say you'll probably not be riding much as the week goes on because of the grotty looking weather. But do take it easy out there. Shiny side up is a good idea. And hopefully